Hello, good evening. This is Al 24 News. I'm Rahim Kashur, and coming up next. Algeria receives Mahmoud Abbas in preparation for the Arab Summit and responds to Zionist Defense Minister visit to Morocco. Three feared dead as Manama army truck runs down protesters. Gambia's presidential election results from 15 out of 53 electoral districts announced, showing incumbent taking an early lead. First, in our top story, Algerian President Abdelmajid Tebboune was in the reception of the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas Abu Mazen today at Houari Boumediene International Airport in an official visit to Algeria. The Palestinian Authority is distinguished by the great official and popular Palestinian announce over the normalization of Moroccan regime with the state of the Zionist entity and the suspicious agreement concluded between the two parties that followed. This is the first visit of Mahmoud Abbas to Algeria since his last visit on December 21st, 2014. This visit also comes in special circumstances that Palestinian cause. And for a better understanding to this Palestinian visit to Algeria, joining me live via phone call, Mr. Haytham Amai, who is a consultant in the Palestinian embassy. Mr. Haytham, first of all, how can we consider this visit to the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas to Algeria after almost a decade since last visit in 2014?
First of all, thank you for having me. Actually, this visit comes after the kind invitation from Algerian President Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune to President Abbas, the President of Palestine State. And this visit comes after 7 years of last visit of Mr. Abbas, the President of State of Palestine. And actually, as you know, when the Chairman Arafat, the symbol of steadfastness of Palestinian people, when he announced the Palestinian state in 1988 in Algiers, now President Abbas is fulfill his wish for our martyrs and our prisoners and Palestinian people that the state does exist and under the occupation. Secondly, this visit comes in very hard circumstances, Palestinian living there under the occupation, and the escalation for our enemy is the Israeli occupation. So such a visit comes to Algiers. Algiers is a very close brother for the Palestinian people, and if you look to the history, you can find that the Algerian people, Algerian governments, through the history, always come together and supporting and siding our cause.
I'm sorry to cut your train of thought, Mr. Haytham. From a political point of view, how can we depict this visit, especially that it comes after a week of Zionist Defense Minister visit to Morocco?
Let me tell you that the invitation has come from the President Mr. Tebboune, the Algerian minister, to our President Mahmoud Abbas before the meeting which held in Morocco with the Israeli minister. And actually we look to such a visit that doesn't help the Palestinian people in our struggle, and doesn't help us to face the aggression has taken place always and all over our countries, and also it is against the decisions and the summit which held in Beirut 2002 that which give and put a line or a boundary for the Arab countries that should not make the dialogue with the Israeli government unless the Palestinian people has taken their rights, which is
Mr. Haytham Ben Ammar from Palestinian Embassy. Thank you so much for your intervention. We appreciate it. Now to a different matter. Travelers heading to UK will face a new restriction as the British government decided to tighten its rule in an attempt to curb the spread of the new COVID-19 variant of Macron. These restrictions are to be applied starting from Monday on all travelers above 13 entering the British territories. Osama Ayadi on what follow.
According to British Health Secretary Sajid Javad, all travellers who are heading to the UK will face exceptional rules in terms of testing against the COVID-19 new variant, Omicron. The UK government imposed a PCR test for all travellers coming from foreign countries, except those coming from Ireland. The test should be taken 48 hours maximum before departure towards British territories. In addition to the PCR test, travellers will have to isolate themselves at least for 2 days in Britain. Another PCR test has to be taken after the 2-day isolation. For vaccinated people, UK government did not impose any testing or quarantine. However, only those with recognized vaccines will have chance to enter British territories with no testing or quarantine. The recognized vaccines include those applied in the UK, USA, and the EU. The list of recognized vaccines include dozens of other countries. As a further measure against Omicron, the UK is adding Nigeria to the so-called red list, which includes a number of African countries whose citizens are not allowed to enter Britain, as a form of curbing the wave of the new variant Omicron.
Growing cases linked to travel with Nigeria. There are 27 cases already in England, and that's growing. And Nigeria now is second only to South Africa in terms of linked cases to Omicron. So today the government has decided to add Nigeria to the travel red list, and that will be effective from 4 a.m. on Monday, which will mean that only UK citizens or residents of the UK can enter the UK from Nigeria.
It is worth noting that the number of cases infected with COVID-19 new variant reached 75 people in the United Kingdom. Health officials and the medical staff in the country are working at a breakneck speed to have the maximum of information about the variant.
The German newspaper Bild published on Saturday details of a plan by Russia to invade Ukraine in light of the high level of tension between the countries, based on NATO and Western intelligence circles and questions about whether the world is on the brink of another war in Europe. Hussam reports.
German news outlet Bild, which spoke to high-ranking military sources, said that Russia's war plans have been exposed, as it has been revealed that Vladimir Putin plans to use 175,000 troops in 3 phases to capture Ukraine. Bild said that Russian plans for war against Ukraine have been known since mid-October, and the US Foreign Intelligence and CIA were able to intercept Russian military communications, which were reviewed by NATO last November. According to information from high-ranking officers, Russian plans to invade Ukraine are ready, and Russian President Vladimir Putin has not yet decided whether they will be implemented or not. The newspaper indicated that the transfers of Russian forces since last April to the border shows that the Kremlin is leaning toward implementing its offensive plans. In addition, the details of the possible Russian attack plan have been evaluated by several officials within NATO and the security community. According to a security source described by Bild as high-level, the attack, if approved by Putin, would launch simultaneously from north of Crimea through separatist regions to east and north. The newspaper added that NATO and the Ukrainian military intelligence expect the attack to take place in the end of January and the beginning of February 2022, in the event that Ukraine and the alliance do not respond to Putin's demands. The newspaper explained that the attack will be on 3 stages, and each stage could be the last in the process in the event that there is Western reaction to the invasion. This comes as Mr. Putin has recently demanded a legally binding guarantee that NATO will not expand east, including to Ukraine, with the Kremlin saying that the Russian leader plans to raise this issue in a call with US President Joe Biden.
Putin and Biden will speak in a video conference this Tuesday as tensions are rising between them over the Russian troops in Ukraine borders. According to Kremlin spokesman, the House will decide how long the conference will be.
Biden and Putin haven't spoken since July when Biden demanded that Putin control the cyber groups. Thus, the leaders will speak in a video conference this Tuesday as tensions are rising between them over the Russian troops in the Ukrainian borders. According to Kremlin spokesman, the heads will decide how long the conference will be. According to a U.S. administration source, Russia has gathered some 70,000 troops along its Ukrainian border, and as stated by Ukraine's military minister, Russia has over 94,000 troops near Ukraine and in Russia-annexed Crimea, and that Putin would face significant dangers if he took action with an invasion. Biden declared that what he's doing is putting together what he believes will be the most complete and meaningful collection of actions against Putin. U.S. and Russia relations have been strained since Biden took the office, and the U.S. administration imposed measures against Russia and warned Putin about cyber activity against American companies.
The Belarusian Defense Ministry summoned Ukraine's military attaché to protest against what is called repeated violation of Belarus's airspace by Ukrainian aircraft. Zahra, on what follow?
Ukraine's military attaché received complaint note by Belarus Defense Ministry on Sunday to protest against what it described as repeated violations of Belarusian airspace by Ukrainian aircraft. The Ukrainian military helicopter had flown 1 kilometer into Belarusian territory throughout maneuvers. However, a spokesperson for Ukraine's border guard service denied the accusations of the Belarusian side. Ukraine's foreign ministry did not immediately reply to a request for comment on Sunday. The Belarusian side conveyed to the military attaché that the Ukrainian side avoids dialogue to resolve controversial issues, both along the lines of international military cooperation and of arms control, which is very worrying. The conflict between Ukraine and Belarus comes amid wider tensions within the area. Ukraine and its NATO allies accuse Russia of massing tens of hundreds of troops close to Ukraine's borders in what they are saying may be preparation for an attack, whereas Russia denies any such plan.
British and American diplomats insist a deal within the reach and would benefit everyone, while Iran insists on its position. The last chance of preventing Iran going nuclear gets underway this week as nuclear talks resume next week. The results may lead to reaching a deal or facing regional escalation and conflicts. Marwa Abel will conflict more.
The Iran talks commencement in Vienna to save the 2015 Iran nuclear deal set on pause until next week, due to Europe and US concerns. After the progress made in the first 6 rounds of talks, US and Europe officials voiced disappointment and concern on the 7th round of talks, as diplomats claimed Tehran is walking back almost all the difficult compromises crafted after months of hard work in previous rounds of talks and demanding major changes. Negotiators are going to return to their capitals to assess the situation and pursue instructions to see whether gaps can be closed or not before resuming the talks next week. The defined aim of US after resuming the talks is to see if the two can revive a 2015 nuclear deal, but diplomats claim that Washington's unspoken goal may be to win support from China and Russia to pressure Iran if the talks fail. European partners at the talks and representatives from Russia and China were quite taken aback with Iran's negotiating position, rejecting the outcomes of 6 rounds of talks in the 7th round.
We don't want to waste time for nothing, for blah 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 general discussions. We need a concrete result, and such a result, this is our conviction, is feasible. Although it will be extremely difficult for us to overcome the existing differences.
Why the United States and the United Kingdom insisted that the breakout time for Iran should be 1 year as a minimum requirement, while allowing Australia to have a breakout time of only a few days or even hours by virtue of acquiring readily manufactured nuclear weapon materials directly.
Russia has been supportive, particularly at the Vienna-based UN nuclear regulator that monitors Iran's eroding compliance. On the other hand, China has weakened US force by buying Iranian oil, throwing Tehran an economic lifeline in violation of US sanctions. This month's talks are the last chance to measure whether Iran wants to revive the 2015 Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. However, if Iran sticks to its position, which it says that it will not be changed, Washington will try to win support from China and Russia to put pressure on Tehran.
Moving on to the African country, the results are expected this evening after Gambia has voted in elections seen as a test for its shift to democracy. 1 million voters were registered for the election in the small West African country. Turnout was high as people had to decide whether President Adama Barrow merits one more mandate.
Over 1 million people registered to vote in the election of Gambia, which is seen as a litmus test for the small West African country's stability and democratic progress. The vote on Saturday was the West African country's first democratic election since former President Yahya Jammeh was ousted in 2016. To avoid spoiled ballots in a country with a high illiteracy rate, Gambia employs a one-of-a-kind voting system involving marbles dropped into each candidate's ballot drum. Adama Barrow, 56-year-old former security guard and property developer, voted in Banjul, and he's up against 5 opponents, including his former political mentor, Osainu Darboe, who is seen as his main rival. As campaigning wrapped up on Thursday, hundreds of Barrow supporters gathered in downtown Banjul for the final rally, hoping another Barrow mandate would secure stability as the Gambia seeks to put 22 years of Jammeh rule behind it. Critics, on the other hand, believed Barrow had broken his promises, pointing to how he reneged on a pledge to serve only 3 years after winning in 2016. Under the majority system, results are expected by Sunday, but preliminary figures will begin to tickle in late Saturday.
The two countries, Uganda and Democratic Republic of Congo, started a joint military operation under the name of Military Suja. This operation aims to revolt against the Allied Democratic Forces, which are considered as a terrorist group. Osama, on what follow?
After the Ugandan army troops who crossed the borders head into the territories of Democratic Republic of Congo, the two countries' military forces launched a joint operation on borders in bid to work on securing the region. Allied Democratic Forces have been a source of terror in the region for years. The Ugandan People's Defense Forces announced early this week that the joint operation with Congolese military forces, named Military Suja, will not come to an end unless the Allied Defense Forces are completely defeated. This operation comes at a time when Allied Democratic Forces are killing and making massacres in Congo's borders. Last month, over 100 civilians were killed in less than a week. The special forces sent by the two neighboring countries have established their tactical bases in Mukakati, around 18 kilometers from Busunga borders. Allied Democratic Forces are considered a terrorist group. The operation spokesperson announced that a number of the group surrendered to the state forces, while other armed groups are trying to take control of the areas of gold, cobalt, and other mines. And for this interest, they invoke military clashes in the east of the Democratic Republic of Congo, which is bordered by Uganda and Rwanda. Ugandan Major General Muhanga stated that this operation is meant to weaken identified enemy camps, as well as creating a conducive environment for the population of the two countries.
On the occasion of International Day of Volunteer Day, Algeria launched the National Volunteer Week in Algiers, the capital. From this point, joining me live, our dear colleague Marwa Belaiwer. Marwa, hello there, how are you? Are you listening to me? It seems that we don't have connection with Marwa. Okay, let's go back to our news. Suspected jihadists in Mali killed at least 30 people in an attack on passenger vehicle in central Mali. This attack has not been claimed by any of the numerous armed groups active in the Western African country. Mali's transitional government said in a statement broadcast on state that TV 31 people were killed and 70 injured, including women and children. The state vowed to take all the necessary procedures to arrest and punish criminals. Central Mali has become one of the most violent areas of the Sahel-wide conflict, where ethnic killings and attacks on government forces are frequent. The head of Sudanese Sovereignty Council, Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, has announced Sudanese military will exit political after elections scheduled for 2023. In an interview with Reuters on Saturday, he added that the deposed former ruling party would have no role in the transitional government. Zahra Farjani on What Follow.
General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan told Reuters that Sudan's military will leave politics after the 2023 elections, adding that the deposed former ruling party would have no role in the transition.
When a government is elected, I don't think the army, the armed forces, or any of the security forces will participate in politics. This is what we agreed on, and this is the natural situation.
Following a military takeover led by al-Burhan in late October that converted Sudan's transition to civilian-led democracy, a deal was struck on November 21st, reinstating Prime Minister Abdullah Hamdouk to lead a technocratic cabinet until elections in July 2023. The coup, which ended a partnership with civilian political parties after the ouster of Omar al-Bashir, drew international disapproval after the imprisonment of dozens of key officials and protesters. Neighborhood resistance committees and political parties have requested the military to quit politics immediately and have rejected any compromise, including the deal with Hamdouk. Al-Burhan stated that international economic support would return through a civilian government, while announcing that Sudan would not be reversing reforms by reinstating support nor going back to printing money.
Yesterday, Macron and Mohammed bin Salman agreed to back up Lebanese and to help resolving the dispute between Lebanon and Gulf countries following George Corday resignment. More in this report.
On Friday, Lebanese Information Minister George Corday resigned following comments he made in October denouncing Saudi Arabia's role in Yemen's civil war, which caused Riyadh to impose a ban on Lebanese imports to help resolve a diplomatic conflict with Saudi Arabia.
I will not accept to be a reason to harm Lebanon or the Lebanese brothers in Saudi Arabia and other Gulf countries.
After Corday's remarks about Saudi Arabia's role in the Yemen war, Riyadh expelled Lebanon's envoy to the country, recalled its ambassador to Beirut, and blocked Lebanese imports in October. Following Saudi Arabia's decision, the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain took a similar position against Lebanon. France and Saudi Arabia have now agreed to support the Lebanese people to assist in the resolution of the diplomatic conflict between Beirut and the Gulf countries and to work together to bring the country's administration back in order. The two leaders spoke with Lebanese Prime Minister, which is a very important step in mending relations with the West and Gulf countries. Emmanuel Macron mentioned that Riyadh has pledged to re-engage financially in the short term and that he will work with Saudi Arabia to help assist Lebanon's crisis.
We will do everything to re-engage all the region in the service of Lebanon. It is important that all Gulf countries continue to help Lebanon and Lebanese people in their daily life, and also for an economic openness for Lebanon.
The French president endeavored international efforts to back up the Lebanese, but it did not help much.
The United States and a group of Western countries, including Germany, France, and Britain, have expressed concern over reported killings and disappearance of former members of Afghan security forces after the Taliban took power in Afghanistan in August. In a joint statement issued over the weekend, the 21st countries plus the European Union referred to a report of such abuses documented by Human Rights Watch and others. The details in this report.
The United States and a group of Western countries, including Germany, France and Britain, have expressed concern over reported killings and disappearances of former members of the Afghan security forces after the Taliban took power in Afghanistan in August. In a joint statement issued over the weekend, the 21 countries plus the European Union referred to reports of such abuses documented by Human Rights Watch and others. Afghan Interior Ministry spokesman Saeed Kusti rejected the accusation of reprisal killings, saying no evidence had been presented. Human Rights Watch said in a report on November 30th that Taliban forces in Afghanistan have executed or forcibly disappeared more than 100 former police and intelligence officers since taking over the country on August 15th, despite the proclaimed amnesty. The Taliban Interior Ministry has rejected the Human Rights Watch report, but said it would arrest anyone who could be shown to have carried out violent reprisals against members of the former military. Facing a deep economic crisis following the abrupt withdrawal of foreign aid when Western countries pulled out of Afghanistan, the Taliban have been appealing for international support to stave off a humanitarian disaster, with more than half of the population facing hunger over the winter.
The Algerian national team is preparing to play last match in the group stage of the Arab Cup in Qatar, when Green Cups meet the Egyptian team in a meeting that is not without fun and excitement, especially as it will determine the top of the group after the two teams have the same balance, in which is 6 points. The two teams qualified for the quarter-finals after the second round. Each of them beats Lebanon and Sudan in the first and the second rounds. Egypt and Algeria share the lead of the group so far with 6 points. To this end, ladies and gentlemen, let's have a check again to our main stories. Algeria receives Mahmoud Abbas in preparation for Arab Summit and in response to Zionist Defense Minister visit to Morocco. We fear that as main army truck runs down on protesters. Gambian presidential election result from 15 out of 53 electoral districts announced, showing incumbents taking an early lead. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us. Take care of yourself. Good night.